It's Friday's Tea Time programme with Matthew Gudgeon. And the man who created the most famous piece of album artwork ever has a new exhibition in Norwich. Sir Peter Blake is the artist behind the cover of the Beatles' 1967 masterpiece, Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Some of Sir Peter's greatest work is hanging at the St Giles Street Gallery, with Sgt Pepper's taking pride of place. And I went to speak to him at last night's launch event.
The actual record cover, Paul had an idea of what he wanted. This idea of Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band kind of being surrogate Beatles. And my main contribution was the idea of the crowd, the magical crowd. By making it life-size and building it, it could be anybody they want. They could choose their own fans. That was my main contribution.
Not ask you about Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. You must be asked about it every day. It must be something that you're still tremendously proud of?
Proud of, but it's an albatross. You probably know the story that I was paid very little to do it. So that stays slightly as a kind of bugbear. Although I've put it into the past, I can't avoid it. As you said, I talk about it almost every day. But the main problem was that the art gallery I was with, Robert Fraser, signed the contract on my behalf and signed away any rights I have on it. So not only do I not get a royalty, I also lost the copyright. So it meant that for many years I couldn't even make a print of it. But it was only when Apple, who were the Beatles management, got involved in making a print that I was able to do that.
I'm fixing a hole where the rain gets in and stops my mind from wandering.
And did you think it would live on all these years? The Beatles by that point were already huge stars, weren't they? But still, it's of such cultural significance, that record.
Yeah, well, I think they were kind of at their peak, weren't they? And and as it happens, the cover ties in with the actual music. It doesn't illustrate the music, but you can't think of Sgt Pepper in a way without the cover, can you? So, yeah, I'm proud to have done it. And what I have done lately, I was getting like 6 bundles of records a week to sign, and realised most of them were going on eBay anyway. So I've kind of diverted them. That's gone. That kind of particular nuisance. There'll be a few here tonight.
Sir Peter Blake has been at the forefront of contemporary art for 6 decades. Part of a youth revolution born of the 1950s, his pop art chimed perfectly with the music and clothes of the 1960s. His collage design for the Beatles' Sgt Pepper's album cover is a classic. He inspired the Target design, beloved of mod fashion, typified by The Who. Now 79 years old, Peter Blake is still working, and this exhibition at the St Giles Street Gallery shows off some of his finest work in print form.
I've been in the art world. Somebody asked me last night, and I worked out that I've been in the art world 66 years. From being a young student, it's been 66 years, so a long time.
How have you evolved in that time? Do you think you've changed a lot over the years?
Not that much, no. There have been themes that have run right through. I've been pretty consistent. Obviously, there are changes. I didn't, in the 60s, I didn't make many prints, for instance, because I felt at that point that people were making them really just for financial gain, and so for some reason I didn't do them then. Whereas recently I've become much more interested and made a lot of prints. So things do evolve and change, but I've stayed pretty consistent.
a wonderful world of softness, a wonderful world.
Collage has formed a significant part of Peter Blake's output. Wrestlers, wild animals, and the advertising artwork of the 60s.
Smoke Salem cigarettes. Only Coca-Cola gives you that refreshing new feeling.
Ho, hey, hey, to Wrigley Spearmint Gum.
It's something I started as a student at the Royal College, and I've done ever since, and I'm still doing, literally. Like yesterday I was working on the collage. And it's a nice medium because it's, when I started, it was limited by what you could find. I only had a small kind of reference library, for instance, at that point. Whereas now I buy all kinds of kind of natural history books. So I've got an enormous library of imagery.
Does something strike you straight away as soon as you lay eyes on it? Yeah, that will be very good for my artwork.
Well, I'm usually looking for things. I mean, there's a group of prints in the exhibition that are in homage to Robert Rauschenberg. So I'm looking through his eyes to see what he might have chosen. So I'm usually looking out for particular things.
Mr. Clean gets rid of dirt and grime and grease in just a minute. Mr. Clean will clean.
Do you mind the phrase pop art? That seems to be a catch-all that people use now.
I don't mind it, no. I mean, there are various interpretations of it. I mean, as a movement, it's probably something that decently should have only gone from like the mid-50s through to the mid-60s. But the reasons for making it and the themes from it still carry on. As a movement, it was quite a short movement, but the ramifications of it go on.
And the wonderful advertising from that era. I mean, you've got cigarette packets, very, very un-PC these days, but they work within the context of the art, don't they?
Well, what's interesting about them is that when I left the Royal College, I'd never been abroad, and I had a year's scholarship to study popular art and travelled through Holland, Belgium, France, Italy and Spain, and collected lots of. I mean, it was to study popular culture, popular art. So I picked up lots of cigarette packets, and about 5 years ago, found this kind of drawer full of stuff, and a lot of it was collected before pop art. So, for instance, there were targets on some of the packets that I then made targets as pop art. So in a way, it's going back to an earlier thing.
Salem's softness freshens your taste.
Do the ideas and the creativity, does it come as readily as when you were a young man?
It does really, yes, because, I mean, there are certain themes. I mean, there's this concept called found art, which the cigarette packets are part of, where I find a nice object. It might be a cigarette packet or a postcard or just a piece of paper, and scan it and print it. So that's open-ended. I mean, there's so many wonderful visual images that can go on forever on its own, and there are all kinds of other themes that come up.
For the benefit of Mr. Kite, there will be a show tonight on trampoline.
Are you as hard on yourself as you were back then?
Yeah, I'm a perfectionist. I mean, I spend a lot of time actually cutting out the imagery to make the collages, and it has to be right. It has to be. I mean, I'm a very good cutter-outer.
Sir Peter Blake, many thanks for talking to us on the programme today.
It's a pleasure, and I hope people will come and see the show.
Infused with the music of the Beatles. Sir Peter Blake talking to me at last night's launch event, and the exhibition at the St Giles Street Gallery will be on until Christmas Eve.